So first thing in the morning, I'm thinking about why is it that some of us have such a hard time catching on to patterns, right? And I realized I also read a couple of articles too about monkeys that can recognize patterns when they're trained. So what is a major part of pattern recognition? Error recognition. So So basically, I'm thinking I'm going to use my stepdaughter for instance. Because I've dealt with her for going on 9 years pretty soon. So so one thing I've noticed with kids is that you'll have these kids that know better than to ask for ice cream first thing in the morning, right? They believe there's a do they believe there's a chance they might get it, like an off chance? They're not seeing the okay, but they're seeing you know the the one off chance that you might say, yeah, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, have candy for breakfast, have pop for breakfast. And there are a few instances where people that don't normally do that will do that. Go ahead. And maybe they look at other parents too that do this, and they think, well, okay, well, when my parents say no, maybe they look at that as an error. They're thinking that this is the off chance that they may be convincing themselves that it's an off chance that they say no, would be the reverse of a normal error, right? Which is kind of interesting when you look at the error itself as the off chance. You know, uh, you're expecting a yes and you get a no, but you were thinking that the no would be the error, right? The opposite. Your brain is literally switching what's normal and what's an error because we can convince ourselves of that, right? Because it's our reality. We can create the information that we want, which is how manipulation works because you're literally creating the error that nobody else is, going to try to predict, either because they don't have the processing power or because their brain isn't trained for that type of behavior. So it's going to make you think, and you're either going to keep going with that thought, try to figure it out, maybe reach a bunch of errors, eventually give up, or you're just going to shut down. Your brain's going to say, you know what, I'm not even going to worry about that. That's just a complete 100% error. There's no reason to even go down that path. Now, basically, what I'm saying is that children are very big pattern recognizers because they're basically stuck in a cage. Not all the time. Like let's say cages are different sizes. Some are out in an open field, but there's still fences, right? Because other people, neighbors, spectators, all these people watching are still setting up guardrails. So they're still within a confined system of what they can and can't do, and the errors, the prediction of errors is changing all the time. Once again, manipulation changes that all up, right? So, what is it that tells kids what an error is and what isn't? Well, you see, I got two different children that are of the age that I can sense where they see errors and where they don't, because my child that I had with my wife, my oldest, she's a hypersensitive. So her confidence is lower. Why? Because she senses those errors and doesn't feel the need to push past them. Because she's hyper aware, she's hypersensitive. And if she thinks that the error is a low chance, she's going to ask, but she's going to be really quick to redact because she's a hypersensitive, which makes sense. they're looking at it as odds of error based on previous experiences with errors, which this is really strange to think about. But it's literally all pattern recognition. You see, mental health is a lot of times based on anxiety and anger, which are patterns, but I believe are based mostly on the probability of errors. You know, when you're at work and you see that coworker that always does things the right way, the way they're supposed to do it. Why? Because they're not trying to look at the errors so much. They're just doing what they have to do, so they prevent those errors, right? And so this is where I believe a lot of us get dumbed down at. But there's also a reason for that, because if a person doesn't see errors, then what would stop them? What would stop them from doing what they want to do if they don't see those errors the same way another person does? You know, a person that's on drugs, they can ignore those errors. Why? Because their brain isn't focusing on the errors, it's focusing on dopamine. It's thinking about thoughts that make that high feel even better, right? Because what would be the point of doing drugs if it still doesn't help with your confidence? So it's literally all about errors. You're bypassing those errors somehow. But this is all. So literally, it's all, you know. Even in a computer, the way I see it is, if the brain cannot, or if the computer cannot predict that error, it's gonna stop, right? Because it's just electricity going through a board that was created and programmed to recognize certain errors. So literally, like when a computer screws up and runs into an error it wasn't trained to deal with, is the same way with confidence in the brain. You know, you're confident you're going to get this answer, but when you get a different answer, your brain's going error, error, error. Got to stop and think about this. But what if you can't stop and think because your anger is propelling you? So, where is the error that creates the anger? And now, you know, it's just like people that lie, like let's say pathological liars. Pathological liars are very good at recognizing errors of when people don't understand. So they look at the person's face, they tell a lie, and they see this expression that they know the other person doesn't believe them. So they're going error, error, error. Okay, make up another lie, and they're high processing, or they wouldn't be able to come up with these lies like that. And I know a lot of people like that, a lot. And they either teach themselves to pass over them errors by creating another lie, or they walk away because they know that is a major error. You're not going to be able to fix that. All you're going to do is make things worse for yourself.